So welcome, Tom Parker, and thanks for joining me on this session today. And I got your name from Daniel Rose, who I interviewed, I think it must be a couple of weeks ago now. Daniel is a cold email outreach copywriter. He always, I tell you what, I've worked with Daniel for probably about 2-3 years now, and we always focus on what do we say, how do we say it, what, why, where, when kind of stuff. It's like words, how many words, 110 words, and how many steps in the sequence. We get right into that stuff. But in that conversation, the last time I spoke to him, he said, that there is a side of this whole game that you can focus on before you get to the copy. And this is where Tom Parker comes in. I was like, oh, who's Tom Parker? Tell me a little bit more. And so he put us into contact with each other, and I wanted to invite you over and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. So quick intro. First of all, let's imagine we're in an elevator and I say, hey, Tom, what do you do? Give me your elevator pitch.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks, Duncan. Really happy to be here today. And I've been working with Dan for a couple of years as well. He's written copy for multiple of my clients. So he's a very good guy. Love him. So the Sales Architect is an independent consultancy, myself. What I focus on is helping my customers, which is mostly small and medium-sized businesses in and around tech. I help them work out the systems, procedures, processes that they need to put in place in order to be successful in their sales and marketing campaigns. Typically, that would be getting the right CRM put in place, getting the right kind of processes around the CRM, and then actioning the process of sending cold emails or using social media platforms or cold calling, and making sure that it all feeds back into the centralized system that we build together, because tracking the data is very important and a lot of companies forget to do that. So that's the main core of what I do.
So are you like a HubSpot guy? Is that the kind of thing? Active Campaign, you get all of that set up, and then, or what platforms are you working on?
I work across a range. I'd like to say that I'm platform agnostic, but obviously there are benefits to working with certain platforms. So I'm a HubSpot partner. I've worked with Salesforce in the past. I work with Pipedrive, and then I work with probably a dozen or maybe 15 other let's say ancillary services around sort of project management, cold email, and various other tools and processes that link those systems together. Like Zapier, for example, is a great tool to link two different systems together and get a bi-directional data feed. That's the technical side of what I do. And then there's also the consultative side of what I do, which is very much strategy orientated, which is, I guess, what we'll talk about today.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that then. What are you seeing in terms of, well, let me give you a little bit of insight as to what I typically talk to clients about when we're having our first couple of conversations, and it's typically a strategic conversation. Mm-hmm. And that when clients say to me, I want to do a campaign, I'm looking to find some new customers, that kind of stuff, I often ask them, what is your strategy? And they don't always know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I just want to send an email and get somebody to reply. Yeah. I say, yeah, but you've got to have a strategy in there. So what I've often used in the past is something we refer to as last in, first out. Now, that is where you look at the last person to have bought your product, you interview them and quite in depth figure out why they've bought off you and what their pain points were and what it is that your product or service solved. Mm-hmm. Then you take that information and you use it as a strategy to reach out to similar people, similar pain points, similar solutions. Yep. Now we call it LIFO or LIFO, whatever you want, but last in, first out. Is that the kind of thing you mean when you talk about strategy?
Yes. So that's part of it for sure. And, getting testimonials and positive case studies is definitely a really good way, or a good lead, what I call a lead magnet. So the concept of a lead magnet, as you probably know, Duncan, is when you're reaching out to someone as a prospective lead, there needs to be some kind of call to action, some kind of activity that you expect them to take in order to progress the relationship with you. Now, like you say, a lot of companies splash out a bunch of cold email in the hope that they're going to receive the response. And they think that the call to action is, please send me back an email, please respond to this email and we can talk further. Really, what a good call to action would do is to give them some kind of value. So it could be a white paper, an article, a pre-recorded video that you're using to talk about a problem that's specific to them in their industry or specific to other people in their industry. Or it could be something like a webinar or a discussion forum or I don't know, an event that you're going to be presenting at when we're all allowed to go outside again, an event that you're going to be presenting at and that you'd like them to come to your booth and have a chat with you. So really the strategy that I talk about a lot with my clients is, what is your lead magnet or lead magnets, because it's good to have multiple of those, and how do you structure your marketing campaign? And then when you feed into your sales funnel, once you've captured that lead, how do you then continue the conversation around that lead magnet? And I'm very much a research and product focused person. I wouldn't say that I'm the best salesperson in the world. So I lean quite heavily on things like research articles as a lead magnet, or, you know, an educational webinar, for example, as a lead magnet. And so really, when you send that cold email, what you should be doing is asking them to sign up to your next webinar or sign up to receive a downloadable copy of your article or your white paper that you've written. And that then gives you a starting point to have the conversation. So when they respond, you can say, well, did you read, or did you attend, or did you do what I asked you to do? And what value did you get back from that? And that helps you start that conversation off. And that's, I think, the mistake that a lot of people make, is that they expect the prospect to just get it and understand your proposition from maybe a paragraph that you put in your first cold email. They're not going to necessarily understand that. So educating them first and then using that hook, that lead magnet, to start the conversation is very important. So a lot of the strategy that I do is all of the prep work and all of the lead up to setting all of that up so that it's an effective lead magnet.
So let's say that when I talk to consultants and professionals with the same skill set or similar skill set to yourself, always sounds so exciting and so easy and so simple. But when I actually talk to a client who might be selling, for instance, dental handpieces, you know, it is a challenge to create a lead magnet. You refer to it as a lead magnet for a product like that, because all that's really happening is that if a dentist or a dental practice has got a problem with a handpiece, then they just want to get a price on how much that is going to cost them to repair and how quickly they can get the work done. Now, when it comes to cold email outreach, what we typically do is we suggest that you reach out with a really simple message, one at a time. Do you have any hand pieces that you need repairing or diagnosing? You know, would you like to jump on a call? Is it costing you cancelled appointments? Stuff like that. Another example would be a company that might do, for instance, pay slips. So they manage your payroll. It's difficult creating a really exciting lead magnet for a company that just does payroll. So they often find that they're just going in with, you know, are you struggling with your payroll right now? I work with a few other businesses like yours. Would you like to jump on a call? So their call to action is constantly, do you want to just jump on a call? Would you say that they should be squeezing something in there that is more of a real lead magnet rather than just a call to action?
Yeah, typically. So yeah, I work with a lot of tech B2B companies, and so the solution that they're going to market with is often more complex, or something that's new and innovative, and therefore it's not as easy for the client to understand. So it's not always a product that they're going to purchase based on cost or based on efficiency or something like that. It's a multifunctional product that serves lots of purposes, and therefore it's going to take the client some time, the prospect some time to really understand and be educated on that. What I would say, if you're selling simple products, nothing simple to sell, but there are simple products that you can try to sell. If you're selling those types of products, just like you say, putting something in there that really qualifies the product as, it's more cost effective. It's done a great job for these clients that we've worked with in the past. It is new and innovative in some kind of way. You want to try and get your USPs across there as much as you can. And I always think trying to do that in a sentence of an email is very difficult to do. You can do it, and I would highly recommend, if you're creating, a 45-second explainer video and you're putting the link to that in the email, it's always good to have a sentence underneath that just summarizes the content of that video for the people that don't want to click on it or don't have their headphones available so they can't listen to it right now. It's always good to repeat in text what you're doing in that lead magnet or summarizing the article or whatever it is. But I think that, having that lead magnet in there and having multiple of them, because obviously typically you're going to be sending a 3, 5, 7 sequence email, 3 or 5, 7 emails in a sequence. So using the same lead magnet 3, 5 or 7 times isn't going to work. There needs to be variations on it and slight differences. And if you do that, you'll find that you can get your campaign to stretch much longer. You don't need to play around and an A/B test quite as much, because each of those steps in the sequence has a unique lead magnet or a unique proposition that you're talking about. So actually it's a bit more evergreen. The strategy that you're using can probably be used for 3 to 6 months, and it's all about just repeating and going through your target list. So you don't have to necessarily change your talk track as often, let's say.
Can you, for those people that don't know what evergreen means, can you just enlarge on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So evergreen content is something that will be just as relevant in 6 months' time as it is right now. So if you're, let's say you're running a webinar in a month's time, if you are talking about that webinar in the run-up, so in the 4 weeks running up to that, you're sending emails out to your current mailing list or your prospective mailing list. Those emails and the content that you put in those emails are not evergreen in and of themselves, because there's a time limit on the fact that that webinar is happening on this date. The webinar itself, though, should be designed to be evergreen. So when you're talking about content or talking about your product or talking about what's going on in the industry in the webinar, try to be cognizant of the fact that someone might click that link and watch it in 6 months' time. So try not to refer too much to things that are going on right now in the industry or, time-limited offers that you've got on at the moment that are going to expire in 2 weeks' time. If you can try and make it as generalized and as useful in the fullness of time as possible, that's what makes it evergreen.
Okay, so one of the things that we found at the beginning of COVID or the beginning of lockdown was that the customer journey changed very swiftly on or around the 23rd, 24th of March.
Yeah.
If you imagine, a lot of people were sat in their offices, sat at their PCs, and they were accessing emails, and they were led on typical customer journeys, which included hyperlink inside the email. Would you like to attend a webinar? And they would click on that, even if it was a personalized one-to-one email, they would click on that link and go through to the webinar page. The idea was that they would then register for the webinar, then attend the webinar, and once they had attended the webinar, the person who had sent them the invite would see that they had attended, how long they'd remained, and if they'd remained, let's say, for more than 75% or 100%, then they would reach out to them and say, hey, how did you enjoy the webinar? That would create some kind of a conversation piece, which would turn into a relationship. And as a result of that, some trust comes in, and then there's a conversation around opportunities, requirements, things like that.
Yep.
Now that was working, and it has worked for a long time. You think about it, whether you were sending HTML, bulk HTML emails or one-to-ones. the problem that we found at the beginning of COVID was that everybody was sent home and they had these mobiles, and that suddenly overnight people went from I think it was somewhere in the region of 36% of people accessing their email or reading their email on a PC to 74% on a mobile. And what we then found is that people clicking through on that link went to a page. There was a lot of unresponsive pages out there, but even the responsive ones weren't great.
Yeah.
And this process or strategy began to really falter. So what we also tested at the same time was just reply to my email and we'll jump on a call. Now that worked straight away. The person still had to make a buying decision. Your email came in just at the right time. Yes, let's jump on a call. Are you free this afternoon at 4 o'clock? And it worked. However, what we found is that we started to get traffic to the domain where we were sending the email from. So we send from a non-precious domain. For us, it's emailmovers-mail.com. So what we did is we took emailmovers-mail and we put a video sales letter on that page. So anybody that copied that, instead of putting a link in the email, anybody that copied it and pasted it into a browser would see a video sales message specifically designed for people who had received this email. I'll show you what this looks like. So this is kind of where we've ended up. Do you see this page here?
Yep, got it.
So you can see that it's actually a subdomain of emailmovers-mail.com. It's VSL. And if you type in emailmovers-mail.com, when the campaigns are going out, it actually gets rid of the subdomain and just redirects here. So this is what you see. There's a video message, there's some testimonials from our existing clients, and then there's a few features, benefits, and straight through to book a call.
Yep.
Now that actually worked. We can see the traffic coming to that page. So we started to use that kind of journey rather than putting the link in the email. The other thing we found when we put links in emails was that we lost control of the journey the customer was, or the prospect was now on, because we expected this landing page to do all the heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. And that really became an issue. You know, we would look at Google Analytics, 100 people have visited that page and 4 have registered. It's like, now it's not an email problem, now it's a landing page problem.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your experience with that? I mean, I know there's a lot in there, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that's very smart, and I'm going to steal that idea because I haven't heard about that before. So one of the clients that I'm working with at the moment, we're using our primary domain is .com. We're using as the non-precious.co.uk, yeah. And we are getting some responses to that. And at the moment, I'm just auto forwarding it back to my .com email address and responding from there. So using that strategy, great idea. I've seen over the last couple of years lots of issues with landing page optimization. I think the way that actually the one that you just showed me a second ago is structured very well. So my recommendation would be that you structure it very similarly to what Duncan just showed us there. So you have your headline banner at the top.
I'll share it again once.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, walk through it and kind of discuss. Yeah, exactly. So you've got your headline banner, a video. Actually, our landing page that we're using at the moment with my client looks almost exactly the same as this. So header, brief video explaining what you want them to do, call to action. If you've got them, testimonials are great. If you're running something like a webinar or you're trying to get them to download another piece of content or something, a brief description, say where you've got here the sort of USPs of email movers, something in there that describes the lead magnet itself and what they will get from it if they read it or watch it. If not, then something like what you've done here with some USPs, and then bookending it with another call to action is definitely the right way to do it. So I would say that your landing page is perfectly structured.
Boom.
Very good. Now the issue is around mobile optimization.
I copied it off someone else.
Well, all the best ideas are copied from someone else. The mobile optimization is an issue. Really, it just means that you need to get your website developer, if it's a third party, or your your internal development team to spend some time and make sure that it is mobile optimized.
Yeah.
I'm not a web dev, so I couldn't tell you exactly what tips and tricks to use there, but it's very important.
Large on mobile optimized, just for those that aren't sure what you mean by that. What's that mean?
Sure. So that web page that you showed us there was obviously desktop optimized, which means that when it's viewed on a desktop monitor, it looks great. Mobile optimized just means that when it's put into the aspect ratio of a typical mobile phone in portrait mode, so when you're holding it this way up, not that way up, it all of the kind of objects on the page realign nicely, and you don't have any text spillage or images that look way too big, or that kind of thing. And that your USPs, say your 4 USPs at the bottom, for example, would stack on top of each other in mobile optimized mode, whereas they're in a grid format on desktop optimized mode.
Cool. So now, what I've therefore said in terms of using a call to action, such as a video sales letter, I could link to that. Obviously, I could just link to it. Oh, let's do this on autopilot. But what I found is that people actually wanted to be able just to reply, yes, I've got your email. I'm looking to get some hand pieces repaired, or I'm looking for help with my invoice factoring, whatever it was that we were doing at the time. And that email comes in and it goes straight to a call. And what I've explained is that we then, for those people that copy and paste the link, yes, there is that VSL, but do you think that there's room in that for a strategy which, say something along the lines of, so we, give you an idea of what it is that we do, whether it be the, broken hand pieces that we're repairing, or video. We've seen a lot of video companies working with us recently. So they create video presentations, or guided tours of properties, or whatever it is, because people haven't been able to get out. They've relied on visual. So we've seen a lot of that. Now, would you try, instead of just saying, call me for more information, do you want to book a call? Would you actually say something along the lines like, put a case study together? Do you want me to send you a copy of that before you jump to a conversation about a sale? Would you try and put something a little bit in there?
Yeah, so that's the concept of the lead magnet, really. It's just adding a step of education between the kind of initial marketing outreach and the discovery call. So the first conversation that you would have with the client, it's adding that step of education in between. That education piece basically pre-qualifies them. If they take the time to read it, watch it, attend it, whatever it is, they're pre-qualifying themselves. They're putting their hands up and saying, I've taken 20 minutes out of my day to understand or maybe less, to understand your proposition. And I've still responded to you, but now you don't have to spend the first 5 minutes of that call qualifying me quite as much, because I know what you want to sell me, and I know how you want me to act. And I'm expecting, to see that face again. If it was a video, you'll see the same face again. So it builds a familiarity as well. So I think putting that education piece in is important, but also being cognizant of the fact that, yes, 50% of people may just read the single line of text underneath that lead magnet, get it straight away. They don't need to watch the video. They don't need to go to the landing page. They just read the fact that this is going to be 20% cheaper than their competitor, and they're straight there, and they just want to book a call with you, and they'll respond. So I think the key, really, and what I do with my customers on the kind of more tactical side of how do you set up your technology, is that your top of funnel, your marketing top of funnel activity can come from multiple places, and there are multiple routes to get to the same result, which is getting them on a demo call or on a discovery call. Whether they take the route of receiving the email, copying the domain, reading all of the content on that landing page and then clicking the button, or if they just straight away respond to you, or if they just book a call straight on the button within the email, regardless of how they flow through, it's important that you as a salesperson, when you get on the phone with them, understand the journey that they took. And therefore, roughly what type of education, what level of education they've had so far. So you can cut out the first irrelevant 5 minutes. If they've already pre-qualified themselves and they've educated themselves with the material that you've given them, you don't need to repeat yourself quite as much. And that really helps with just initiating the conversation, because you can say when you get on the phone, oh, did you watch my 2-minute video, or did you read that article that I sent you? What did you think? And that gets them to pour their heart out rather than exactly, it's your icebreaker. But there's also lots of other smart tools out there as well. Am I okay to name other brands and things that I think are useful? So I think there's other tools out there. Loom, for example, LOOM.
Yeah, I use Loom. They do the video. So
exactly.
You record a video and then you send it back. Yeah. So would you use that?
So we're using that at the moment with one of my other clients. We record a personalized 45-second video. Wow. The main bulk of it, so the sort of middle 20 to 30 seconds, is very similar in every video, but the first 10-15 seconds is using personalization. So we say, hi, the person's name that we're reaching out to, thanks for connecting with me via whatever channel, or I noticed that you read the article, or I noticed that you attended our webinar, or whatever. So that's the personalization piece. Then we'll go into a standard track of saying, here at our company, we're doing blah, 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 and we think that you would benefit by receiving XYZ. If you want to talk about it further, give me a call. Thanks very much. That's 45 seconds or less. And our sales rep, when we've got a warm lead, we'll actually just record the video there and then on Loom. Click a button, make sure your background's okay. Click a button, do your 45 seconds, it wraps it up in a link for you, and you can embed that in an email. It's good to embed that with a thumbnail, I think, as well, so that it's clear that they can click on that. And that will take them to a separate Loom page, and that page will have the ability to comment. So that's also another way that they can get in, is that they land on that page through the video. They think, oh, I've got a question about that. They can actually type into the text box on Loom. So that's another channel. They might not ask that question by email or ask it on the webinar or whatever. They might type it into Loom. So it's just making sure that all of those channels end up in the same place effectively. If you're using HubSpot, Vidyard is another alternative to do exactly the same thing. And you can actually embed and get the email to play in the email as well if you're using HubSpot. So there's lots of different options to do the same thing.
So if we were to look at the customer journey in reference to one-to-one cold email outreach, my email goes out, and let's say that I've snuck in a call to action there, but just before it, I've actually put in whether or not that person would like a case study. Now, for a company that repairs, as I say, pan pieces for dental practices, it might be difficult to put together a webinar or a case study, because it is such a simple service. But let's say that they do manage to do something. What they typically do, these types of companies, is that they then go on the phone. So a person replies and says, yes, give me a price, what have you, and then they just call them and they say, okay, well, I've got something here. I need to figure out what's wrong with it and get it repaired. How much would it cost? How long is it time to do it? Now, what we've got here is that what you're saying is that try to use some of these lead magnets to further qualify them, so that when the conversation actually happens, they know a little bit more about what it is that you do, how quickly you can turn things around, all that kind of stuff. So you're a bit closer to the prospect, or the prospect has a clearer understanding of you by the time they get onto the phone with you. Let's ask this question then. So if we've got to that point, or if we've got to that stage with the prospect, and we are in almost the end of the journey now, would you say that it still makes sense to use tools like Loom and Vidyard to make recordings, or would you just get on the phone and just say, look, this is how it works, this is how fast we can turn things around? What do you think is the most important?
I think it depends on what works in your industry and how engaged your prospective customers are. I think, adding in a step in the process, and I always try to make those, say something like a Loom video, is what I consider as an optional step in the process rather than a mandatory one. Obviously, receiving the email is a mandatory step in the marketing funnel, because if they don't receive the email, they don't know who you are.
Sure.
But whether they click on the video or not is very much optional, and it depends on them and the time that they have available. So I think, yes, always bookmarking everything that you do with a hyperlinked book a call with me right here, which goes out to a Calendly link or a whatever you're using for that, is always good to have. And there's still nothing that beats picking up the phone and calling them. And the whole point of the lead magnets is that you are collecting their phone number, because you may have, purchased an email movers lead list, or you've scraped the email address from somewhere, LinkedIn or somewhere else, or one of the other millions of tools out there that you can scrape emails with. You've cold emailed them. They've registered an interest, but through registering an interest, they've inserted their mobile phone number, because, like you say, having their desk phone number is almost useless these days, unless they're in an industry where they're still office based, because it's just going to ring out and you're never going to speak to anyone. So still, if they've gone through that process and they've inserted their mobile phone number somewhere, I would say that they've pre-qualified themselves, because they've taken an interest in something that you've had to offer. And picking up the phone, at that point, if they've already inserted that number, doing a Loom recording or sending them a second case study or inviting them to a second call to action is probably not worth it. You're better off just picking up the phone. And if the phone rings out and they don't respond to your voicemail, then re-enroll them further down the sequence into something where they'll receive a second CTA. But yeah, I agree. Nothing beats calling them if you know that they're interested.
I guess if you're using LinkedIn and you've reached out to somebody and they've connected with you, then you do a Loom recording, put it into the message and all that kind of stuff. Yes, you've probably got that way of opening up the relationship, but with one-to-one cold email outreach, if they replied and asked for a cost, then you just want to get straight on the phone with them. You want to you kind of forget everything else. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: when you've worked with customers on one-to-one cold email outreach campaigns, and you've seen them using these kind of case studies, maybe sometimes in the third or fourth email, if we're not getting a response from the first, second, third email, we might go in a second cadence, or in a fourth message of the first cadence, we might go to, look, I've got a case study here, do you want me to send you it? And that might get a yes, or no thanks, I'm not interested, or that kind of stuff. Now, that can be quite interesting. Typically, when they do that, it's then a link. So we send them, the person will send them a link, and that link is to a case study. What do you think that journey should feel like? Do you think it should be hyper-personalized so that it's kind of a Loom video and this, that, and the other with the case study attached? Or do you think it should be a landing page that you send them through to? Where do you think you would land on that?
So I think a big no-no, generally speaking, nowadays is don't attach a document. That's purely because it's difficult, it's impossible to track whether that document is read. And there's loads of tools out there nowadays where if you were to put that case study on a landing page, link that landing page up to a piece of tracking software, there's loads out there. Like I always refer to HubSpot because it's usually integrated with everything else that you're doing. You can see who's landing on there, the source, where they came from. So if they clicked through from a specific URL that's only being embedded in that particular sequence, then you know that you can attribute that landing page click from that particular email, which is very useful. And then you can see things like their dwell time on the page, how far did they scroll, how long did they read it for, did they click the book a call button at the bottom, yes or no. So I think general best practice nowadays is don't attach it as a document, because you don't get any of that. You don't get any of that information. Definitely put it on a landing page or within a blog page of your website, for example. It doesn't have to be a dedicated landing page that you've set up that's specifically geared around this particular use case or testimonial. It could just be pop a blog into your blog. If you're using WordPress, then it's easy. You just create a new blog post, pop it straight into there, and that gives you a unique URL that you can track in exactly the same way as a landing page. So I think a lot of the sort of early stage startup clients that I work with, they just don't have the resources to create a separate landing page for each campaign or each lead magnet, each piece of content. So just making use of those features on the blog, for example, but make sure you've got your backtracking to know where they came from and what they did next, most importantly. And then really best practice is just to spend some time tweaking it. You know, if 20 people have landed on the page and 18 of them didn't even get past the first scroll, they didn't get below the fold, then you know that your above the fold content isn't good enough and you need to tweak it. And so it's all about iteration, really, and learning from your previous campaign's mistakes and making the right decisions in the next one.
Something that you said on that just in the last few minutes is we've got a client that we work with who's got a training session. So you can subscribe to their solution and you get these training videos, and it's actually for your sales team to help them deal effectively with objections and all this kind of stuff. I've looked at the training program myself, and it's a really interesting program. But not only that, you can have licenses for 20 people in your team, and some good tech going on there. But reality is that they're kind of a technology company, and their surface is that it's sales training. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about as a call to action or as a strategy is to offer one license for free, and then somebody says, "Wow, this is brilliant! I've seen some of these videos are really good," and someone else in the office hears and says, "Oh, we should all be doing this," and then they go and get multiple licenses. So the company will then say, "Right, we use multiple licenses across business." How well does that kind of freemium, because that's quite close to a freemium strategy, how well does that work? Is it okay to give away licenses in a cold email outreach campaign? Say, look, we'd like to gift you a license, it's 30 days, 14 days, something like that. Or does it cheapen the product? Or what's your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so. And I think so if you're selling a SaaS product, definitely free trials, limited time or capped usage. So there's a lot of email outreach companies out there, for example. They'll give you a free seat. That seat isn't necessarily time bound, but they'll say that you can send 25 emails per month for free with some limited functionality behind that. But if you upgrade, then you can achieve unlimited, and you can have all the features and functionality. So my personal opinion is, yes, offering a free trial, whether it's time bound or usage capped or some other method of prevention of seat sharing and being able to earn, there's always ways that you can loophole these things to earn free credits so that you can basically run off of a free account indefinitely as a smaller business. Yeah. So you need to close off all of those loopholes and make sure that you're not doing that. But I think it's a very well-trodden path, and there's a reason why lots of companies do so well with that. A good company that I've seen that does that very well is Happy Scribe. So they're a transcription company. You upload a video and it transcribes the video and puts subtitles at the bottom. Very simple product.
Wow, cool.
I definitely recommend that you check it out. And I did some work with them last year, and they went from basically like a couple of hundred new signups per month to 30,000 new signups per month in about a 6-month period by offering the tool completely free for 14 days. And you could upload as many videos as you want. There was a cap on the number of hours of transcription that could be done. I think it was 2 hours or something within that starting period. But it gives you enough time to get a feel for the product, what it can do for me, what it can do for my colleagues around me.
Yeah.
And even if you're only in that type of freemium model, even if you're only converting 10-15% of those free trials into paying customers at your basic level of subscription, it's still 10-15% more people than you probably would have had if you didn't offer the free trial, because nowadays people don't have a company credit card that they can just splash a couple of £100 onto and nobody asks any questions. Everything has to go through an approvals process. So removing all of those barriers to entry and giving people free access with literally just a username, password, email address, and first name, last name is a great way of doing it.
So I think on that point there, it's probably a a good place to finish. I'd really like to say thanks for spending so much time. I didn't realize that we'd go and do so much time, but I do appreciate that. If one of our customers wanted to reach out and ask you for help with their sales journey, you know, a little bit of strategic consultancy, maybe some help with their HubSpot account, how would they get into contact with you, Tom?
So you can get me on LinkedIn, Tom Parker on LinkedIn. You can go to thesalesarchitect.co.uk, and that's got all of my kind of services and offerings that I have laid out on there. Or you can just send me an email, tom@thesalesarchitect.co.uk.
That's brilliant. So I'm going to put a little blog post together for this as well. I'm going to just try and summarize some of the things we've talked about, and I'm going to share that. I'm going to share that, like, you know what? I'm really going to put that out on LinkedIn, because one of the things I've really valued here is that using your call to action with or in harmony with a lead magnet is something that people should be testing, especially if they're looking at a more substantive SaaS product or something like that. Yeah, there's nothing like getting the client on the phone, but if you've got some kind of a leeway to put that in there, it's definitely worth testing.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that, Tom. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Duncan. Glad to be on, and yeah, hopefully the advice will help some of your clients as well.
Cool. Thanks, buddy.
Brilliant. Thanks.